The Strand subclass, specializing in debuffing targets with Sever and Unravel, tying your enemies up in the air with Suspend, and great survivability in endgame content with Woven Mail. These Strand builds for each class are must-haves in your arsenal to tackle Legend Onslaught. Let's dive in. Starting with the Strand Hunter, our exotic is going to be Foe Tracer, which improves our weapon damage after damaging a target with an ability. In our subclass, we're going to be using Silk Strike, Gambler's Dodge to refund our melee, Threaded Spike, and the Grapple Grenade. Our aspects are going to be Widow's Silk, as well as Whirling Maelstrom. Our fragments are going to be Thread of Generation, Thread of Warding, Thread of Binding, and Thread of Transmutation. When we look at what stats you want to build into, obviously you want Tier 10 Resilience, then you want Mobility, and Discipline for your stats. Looking at some weapons to bring along with this build, the Tusk of the Boar Waveframe GL from Iron Banner is phenomenal, especially if you can get something like Slice and Chain Reaction. In the energy slot, I always say bring something like Sunshot. Sunshot is one of the best primary ammo weapons in the game, hands down, so having something like Sunshot in your arsenal, always a must. For the heavy, I actually use Semiotition because it is a Strand rocket launcher that gets Field Prep and Frenzy, and you can just tie that in and get that damage buff from Foe Tracer to make this even better. Taking a look at the mods on the helmet, we're going to go with Heavy Ammo Finder, and then I am using the Solar Strand Dual Siphon from the artifact. Our gauntlets are going to have Impact Induction, Focusing Strike, and Heavy Handed. Resistances for whatever the threat is for the day on Onslaught, Innervation, Recuperation, and Better Already, or the leg mods, and then finally Outreach, Bomber, and a Reaper on the class item. In the artifact, make sure to have Unraveling Orbs and Horde Shuttle so you can take advantage of those Strand artifact mods. And then obviously you want Flame, Fiber, and Freeze. Moving on over to the Strand Warlock, our exotic is going to be Necrotic Grips. And we're going to pair that with a Weapon of Sorrow. My choice is Thorn. In the subclass, Needle Storm for the super, obviously, Healing Rift, then Arcane Needle and Shackle Grenades. We're not going to be throwing these grenades because we're going to actually be using our aspect here, Mindspun Invocation, to consume our grenade to proc Weaver's Trance. Pairing alongside Mindspun Invocation, we're going to be going with the Wanderer. And then for our fragments, we're going to be going with Thread of Transmutation, Thread of Fury, Thread of Warding, and Thread of Generation. For the stats to build into, Resilience obviously, then Recovery and Discipline. Weapons, as I said, we're going to be using Thorn. You could also use any Weapon of Sorrow here, but I just think Thorn is the best because of the exotic hand cannons being some of the strongest weapons in the game for PvE. Energy slot, I've been using Forbearance a lot. It's a great one, especially because GLs are the overcharged weapon this week, but your special can be kind of whatever the overcharged weapon is or whatever you choose. Waveframes are a great choice here. In the heavy slot, I always use a machine gun and then swap to a rocket launcher for DPS, or if you're going to be dealing with those pesky tormentors, a linear fusion rifle is always a great choice as well. Finally, for the armor mods, Kinetic Siphon for our Thorn, Hands-On, and then I am just using Radiant Light to fill the slot here. Melee Kickstart, and then Impact Induction on the gauntlets. Resistance mods for whatever the threat is in Onslaught this week. Then we're going to go with Recuperation, Better Already, and Innervation on the boots. Finalizing this off with Bomber, Outreach, and Reaper on the class item. Again, make sure you have Unraveling Orbs and Horde Shuttle as your artifact mods. Whatever else you can use there is good. Finally, we have the tried and true Synthoceps Strand Titan. You all know this build. It's phenomenal. Blade Fury for our super, whatever barricade you choose. Frenzied Blade and Grapple for the grenade. Into the Fray and Banner of War are going to be our aspects, pairing alongside the Thread of Propagation, Thread of Fury, Thread of Transmutation, and Thread of Generation. For our weapons in the kinetic slot, I've been going with a Wastelander with Lead from Gold 1-2 Punch. You don't have to necessarily use this. You could use Monte Carlo or you could use a Strand weapon. However, make sure you do have a 1-2 Punch shotgun. The primary weapon can be whatever you choose. And then for the heavy, I like to use a Strand machine gun, but you could also use Tractor Cannon to get a little bit extra damage. In those higher rounds, though, I'd recommend helping your team out with some damage, whether that be with a linear or a rocket. And then again, in the ad waves, just use a machine gun. For the mods, a siphon mod, hands-on, heavy-handed, impact induction, and then a melee kickstart. Resistance mods for the threat, invigoration, recuperation, absolution, outreach, powerful attraction, and then a reaper. Obviously, make sure you have these two in the artifact again. You now have 3 incredible Strand builds in your arsenal. Use them as you see fit, have fun, and be sure to come back for the last of these subclasses because we're going to be covering every single one leading up to final shape. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscription if you so please. It helps me out a ton. Check out my live streams and short form videos on Twitch and TikTok so you can tell me what's better than these or what's wrong with them. I'll see you all again very soon. Peace.